Okay, so welcome to our Computer Engineering Co-op Spring 2016 Job Search Meeting. Thank you very much for coming. You all have the handouts, which is fantastic. Make sure you sign in if you haven't signed in before you leave. So that way I have record of you coming today. For those of you who have not met, though I think I see a lot of familiar faces, but those of you who have not met, my name is Todd Foley, and I am the Computer Engineering Co-op Faculty Advisor here at University of Cincinnati. I've been here for about a year or so. So I'm ready to go, know everything I need to know to get you started in the search for the spring. The term is December 28th through May 6th. I'm going to say that a few times, but I want to make sure I reiterate, these are the dates. I'm giving you a handout that has key dates on it. Hopefully you have a pen or a pencil that you can take some notes because we're going to go over a lot of really minute details. So make sure you pay careful attention. But the dates are December 28th to May 6th. Now, those dates are flexible. Some employers don't like folks starting on December 28th, a few days before the new year, and so they'll have you come in January 2nd, January 3rd, or something like that, depending on the day of the week. But the official start of the co-op term is December 28th. It's not the first day of classes, and it goes until May 6th, which is not the last day of classes or last day of finals, right? This is a co-op term. It's slightly different. It's supposed to be 16 total weeks. We could be flexible with those dates on both the front end and the back end, but try to get the date within 3 or 4, at least a week on either side of those dates. Some people like to start early, some people like to end late, those types of things. So keep that in mind as you're working with your employer. At the end of the day, it's between you and your employer about your start and end dates. We're going to go through a few things today about the co-op experience, but mostly I'm going to go through some resources with you, things that you'll need to know in order to be successful. For some of you who went to the spring meeting, this is going to be like, I've heard all of this before, so I'm going to gloss over a few things rather quickly, but most of this is going to be term-specific information. This is why I want you to have a pen and a piece of paper to take notes. So some resources that you're going to have. Right now you have key dates. That's a handout I've given to you. I'm also going to email that to you. The other things I'm going to email you when I am ready for you to start searching for jobs in our system is the Co-op Search Strategy Guide. I have about 7 or 8 tips on how to do a co-op search really, really well. There's a document, 2 Google documents that I have that I'll provide you the links for that you should become very familiar with. One is the new PAL Jobs Google document, which lists all the new jobs that get added to PAL after your first round of rankings within the system. The second Google Doc is a top-tier company online job board. So a lot of companies like Amazon or Apple or Google or something like that, they're not going to be necessarily in PAL or even looking in PAL for your resume if you want to work for one of them. And so what I've done is I've aggregated that list, created it, and then put in some notes so it's easy for you to navigate some of those things. If you're interested in working for a Silicon Valley company or something that some famous company, a big company or something like that in the world, now is the time to look for those. Those may or may not be a spring co-op, maybe a spring or a summer, so that's something to consider right now. I will send you those as links as well in emails. The other things that you can keep in mind is if you want to meet with me, always just call the phone number that's listed on the PowerPoint here. It's also in your sheet on the second page. If you want to meet with me, the quickest way to do it is just call, and then they'll set up a time for us to meet together. If you email me and say, hey, I'd love to meet with you, here are my available times, I'll say, hey, thanks, that's great. Could you please call this number and set up a time to meet with me? They control my calendar. It's much easier to funnel everyone into one area to get on my calendar, so it's a little bit easier on me and on you. And then I will also send you a list of top employers. There are over 350 positions in our system that you may or may not want to look at. We have about 100 and so employers. And so that's a lot of folks in there looking and offering for jobs. And so I'm going to give you the top list of who's hired the most computer engineers from University of Cincinnati over the last few years. And so that kind of filters out a lot of the noise for you. So you can say, I'm definitely going to apply for these top 20 because these guys always hire. I have some expectations. I want you to make sure that you have viewed every single PAL tutorial on YouTube. Now, you should have done that in your intro class. Hopefully you have done that, and hopefully you've committed those things to memory. But sometimes you might have forgotten something if you've not actually accessed the system on a regular basis. So if you have questions about PAL, how do I log in? How do I rank positions? How do I change my email address? All these types of things. Do not email me those questions. I will not respond to those. I will simply respond and say, here's the link to all the videos online that teach you how to do everything in PAL. And so you'll just go there. So that's your first place to go. If you have a question about PAL that isn't really generally listed on those in those videos, like I can't log in for some reason, something's not letting me do something, it's telling me that I'm in a different major and I'm supposed to be in computer engineering, all those types of questions, please do send those to me and I will help you out with those things. But for the most part, you're responsible for knowing how to use PAL. Make sure when you upload your resume into the system that you upload it as a PDF document, not as a Word document. You're going to make your resume in Word or whatever word processing software you use, but then you're going to convert it to a PDF before you put it in PAL. Sometimes PAL, when it converts your Word document to a PDF online, it gets wonky somewhere in the middle. And if you have like some weird fonts that you're using, it doesn't convert and all of a sudden it looks really weird. And if you don't check, employers are going to be looking at a resume that's either incomplete or something's wrong with it. The most common mistake I see is that you upload a Word document and it adds a second page and you have a second blank page. So every time they look at your resume, they see this blank page, and employers do get a little annoyed at that. And so I would just keep in mind those things when you're creating that PDF to upload. View jobs. I expect that you go into PAL and look at jobs. That's a pretty no-brainer expectation, because otherwise how else are you going to find a job? You can do things on your own, and I encourage you to do that. But I would expect that you go into PAL and rank positions. Speaking of ranking, you need to rank at least 60 positions in PAL by the first round when resumes go out. The key dates are on that document. I'm going to talk about dates a little bit later. But by the first round, you need to have ranked 60 positions as very interested. Earlier, I just told you that there are 350 of them in there, so that doesn't sound like a bad thing. But I've been told by upper class students that ranking positions in PAL, for every 10 that you do, it takes about an hour. For some of you sitting in the room have done this already, and so you know that it can take a long time. So you have 60 that you need to do before the first round goes out. In addition to that, I want you to apply to at least 5 companies that are external from PAL, things that you find on your own. Some notes on that. There are 2 places I prefer to look at for external applications. My primary is Indeed.com. Indeed is nice because it filters out, it doesn't have advertising for the most part, and it filters out all the noise for you that is in the rest of the world. It takes all the other sites that like CareerBuilder and Monster and Glassdoor and takes their listings as well as listings directly from top employers' own HR websites and funnels them into Indeed. It's one of the most comprehensive places to find jobs that I've been able to discover. And so I would definitely recommend that. I will actually send you a link on how to search for a computer engineering internship through Indeed without having to figure it out yourself. You can certainly do that. It takes only a few moments. But I will also just send you a link that you can just click on, and it'll automatically bring up every computer engineering co-op or internship in the country at any given moment. The other place that I prefer is LinkedIn. LinkedIn actually has a special page called students.linkedin.com. And it's not just going to LinkedIn and clicking on jobs, because there's hundreds of thousands of jobs on there. But what it is, it's a student portal for students and recent graduates. And if you go through this system and you scroll down, it says search for jobs, and you select engineering, you'll get to a page where it lists over 100,000 jobs. If you eliminate entry level and only look at internships, it should be somewhere around 3,000. That's nationwide. And it's a really good way to do that. It also filters them, if you've created a LinkedIn profile, based on your profile. So like location, things that you've done already, and it'll put them at the top for you. It'll also tell you how you're connected to people who work at those places. So if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, it'll tell you if I'm connected to those people, and generally I am. And so that way it can be a good way to create networking opportunities for you with the co-op search. So that's 60 jobs in PAL and 5 external applications before the deadline, which is September 11th for round 1. Round 2, which is a little bit later in the semester, I think it's October 6th or something like that, it's 80 jobs. So I want you to go from 60 to 80, and I want you to go from 5 applications to 10. Make sense? Now, you might think that external applications include places that are in PAL, that require you to go outside of PAL to apply for them. BMW is a very good example of that. BMW uses PAL. We list their positions in PAL, which is fantastic, but they'll never go in and look at resumes. They don't like to use our system. So the position description for BMW and many other positions just clearly says, please apply for this position online. Here's the link. When you go into the system and you see a position like BMW that you're interested in, not only click on that link and apply for that job externally, but rank it as very interested if that's a job you're interested in. The reason why I have you do that is a couple things. One, it tells me that you're interested in working for BMW. So when they call, and they do, and say, hey, we need some applicants because we're trying to fill a position that we have, I can then send them easily the people who have applied for BMW's job, as opposed to looking at 100 or so resumes and sending them a big packet, which I won't do. So if only 2 or 3 people have actually gone in and selected BMW as an option, then only those 2 or 3 people are the people I'm going to send. The other reason why I like having you do it is because I will send you a reminder. If you have not gone online and done it yourself, I will remind you to do that. Job ranking is a 2-step process. So when you click very interested, and you have done a bunch of those, in order to finalize that, you have to scroll all the way to the bottom and hit finalize selection. If you don't hit that last button, all of your work will be gone. It's like writing a term paper and forgetting to hit save and then the computer crashing. It's the worst feeling ever. So do things as they come. If people like go alphabetically, go A through F and then hit finalize, then G through whatever, then hit finalize, etc., etc. However you feel the most appropriate way to do it, but make sure you hit that finalize button often so that you can have those things loaded for you and saved. The other things I want you to keep in mind is, yes, rank things as somewhat and not interested. If you take the time to read somebody's job description, don't just ignore it afterwards. If it doesn't seem interesting to you, click not interested. If it's something that you might be interested in, go ahead and click somewhat. Because what's going to happen is months later, if you don't have a co-op yet, I'm going to continue to ask you to go and rank positions in PAL. That's the #1 way for us to get students jobs. And so if you're going to just keep going back in and rereading job descriptions over and over again, it's going to be a big waste of your time. So what I'd rather have you do is select things as somewhat interested that you can convert to very interested later on. Make sense? Okay. There you go. Some other expectations. Attend the career fair. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. The career fair is super important. I have a statistic that shows that 90% of the students who get a job in the first 6 weeks of the semester can attribute that to the career fair alone. And so that's without PAL, without everything else. So that's an intense sort of time to be. I mean, they can attest to what it's like to be at the career fair. Lots and lots of people talking lots and lots of different ways. But I really recommend that you go, and I expect that you will be there. Respond promptly to all employer emails. I can't stress this enough. If an employer sends you an email, respond within 24 hours. All right? That includes if you've already received interviews and already received offers and you're not interested in a company anymore, still respond so that they know, so that they can move on to the next person. You don't want to have a job offer and then screw over your friend because you're keeping the employer thinking that you might still be interested. All right? Ensure that you have a custom voice message. Employers will tell me that if they call your cell phone and it's the automatic robotic voice that says this phone number is not available, they won't leave messages. So make sure that you change that to a custom message that just has your name so that they know it's you, that they can leave it. There are actually laws that govern that sort of thing with HR and policies, and so if there's no name, they can't leave a message. Oftentimes they won't. Respond promptly to all my emails, okay? You will look like this guy when you receive emails from me. These guys can also attest to that. My emails are really, really long and really, really boring and full of a ton of information. But I do that on purpose. I'd rather send you one really long email once a week than 9 or 10 emails a week that are smaller. All right, so I just pick everything that I need to send you and I just send it all at once. So make sure you read the entire thing. I often will send you job updates. These are jobs that are available. Please apply for these. I'll send you communication on different information nights that you might be interested in attending. Or I might send you status updates and say, here are 5 questions. Can you hit reply real quick and tell me how many interviews you've had, who you've interviewed with, if you've interviewed with anyone, how many offers have you had, if you've had any, and have you accepted a job and you just hasn't told anyone yet. That is something I frequently will do. I'll also send you surveys that are really quick. Sometimes I'll send a survey that asks you, what kind of programming languages do you know? And you'll say to yourself, well, this is on my resume. Why is he asking this? Because I'm not going to look through 100 some odd resumes to figure out who's got .NET experience, because I have an employer who wants someone who has .NET experience. It's easy for me to just pull up a list and then send them those names, and then they go in and look at resumes. It's very, very quick, and it's very, very easy to do it that way. So please respond to all my emails and all my requests for information. This is just one little bit, last information about expectations. You may be the most awesome candidate in the entire world, and you interview with one company, it's your favorite company in the whole world, and they hire you like that moment, right? And you're thinking to yourself, I'm the best. I didn't need all this junk and all these things like that. But keep in mind that there are a lot of people before me even that have set up this situation for you to be successful in that moment. And so all I do is ask that you respect that process. And so when people put on things like the career fair, or we send emails, or we put on info nights, that you do take the time to consider those, attend those, and be part of the process. Because it's all built to help you land a co-op and be successful in your profession. Oh, I guess I have one more thing. The last thing I will say, and Alan actually talked really well last night with the other group about this, prepare for interviews. I cannot stress that enough. How often that a student, I will ask them at the end of the term, how many people did you interview with? And they'll say, I had 3 interviews. And I'll say, with who? And they won't even remember the names of the companies they interviewed with. Know the company that you applied to. Hey, everybody. So in this video, we're going to talk about the steps in the co-op search process as a part of the overall co-op search strategy. Really, students often find that the overall search process for a co-op is quite complex, but I am going to try and break it down for you into some easy phases to kind of understand, in 16 easy steps. I know that 16 sounds a lot, but it really is pretty easy to understand once you kind of break it down into these 4 phases. Like the 4 phases kind of encapsulate the entering of the search portion, where you're doing the introductory stuff, exploring all the opportunities for co-op and things that are available to you, evaluating all your different options, and then engaging in that co-op experience. So phase 1. What is phase 1? Phase 1 is entering the search. You enroll in PD 1011, Intro to Co-op for engineering. You pass that course. At the same time, your department is going to certify you for co-op. They're going to talk to your co-op advisor in the professional practice division, and they're going to talk to them about whether or not you are certified to co-op in the next coming year. And basically, certification includes whether or not you've had enough classes in order to co-op, whether you've passed a certain number of classes, if you have a GPA requirement in your major in order to co-op. Once those certifications are sent to your co-op advisor, they'll send you communication about getting together for a group job meeting. Most of these job meetings are large group meetings. Sometimes they can be smaller groups, and sometimes they're one-on-one. But for the most part, you're going to have some sort of job meeting with your co-op advisor, and they're going to talk to you about the whole process. They're going to go over this entire sort of all these phases as well. But suffice to say that the general part of it is how to search for a co-op and tips and tricks on how to search for co-op within that specific major. After that job meeting, you're going to go into PAL, which is the resource we use for searching for co-ops and registering for co-ops, and then eventually assessing co-ops. You're going to go into PAL and you're going to upload your resume, get that approved by your advisor, and then in order to move on to the next phase of the search, you have to have that resume uploaded and ready to go in PAL. Phase 2 is exploring opportunities. This is the fun part. You are finally released to see jobs in PAL once you have that resume uploaded, and you get to rank jobs. Now, there are 3 types of rankings of jobs. It's very interested, somewhat interested, or not interested. For the most part, though, you're looking at very interested jobs. If you find a job that you're very interested in, and you click very interested as a rank, that is a signal in the system to send an application to that employer when your resume is finally released by your co-op advisor. And so you're going to want to go in and rank as many jobs as you think that you're interested in as very interested, and that way those employers will see your resume. Once you've done ranking positions and you finalize those rankings, your co-op advisor will release your resume to the employers, and they'll be able to log into PAL themselves and look at your resume. Then, of course, you interview for jobs and communicate with employers the entire time. Moving on to the next phase requires an offer. And so once you get that offer and you're in phase 3, you're evaluating that all those options, right? Sometimes you might get 1 or 2 offers. Sometimes you'll get an offer really, really soon, and you'll have to figure out what's best for me in my search strategy. My recommendation is anytime you get an offer is to contact your co-op advisor and just let them know that you've got an offer and here are the things you're thinking about, and ask any questions that you might have. But once you've got that offer and you accepted that offer, either verbally or written. A verbal offer is binding for co-ops, and so once you've accepted that offer, you're going to log back into PAL and you're going to click a button that says I landed a co-op. It's a big blue button in PAL. You can't miss it. That triggers a system where the advisor goes in and approves that placement, which also goes to the employer. So if you logged into the wrong job, an employer will notify us that that was an inaccurate selection or what have you. But for the most part, everyone gets notified. You get an email saying you've landed a co-op. It's fantastic. Everyone's excited. And then you register for co-op through the university's systems. The move on to the next phase is basically going on to co-op, and that's really phase 4, is engaging in that co-op opportunity. You go on to the co-op, you complete your entire semester. During your semester, you fill out co-op assessments. There are 3 of them, one at the beginning of the semester, one in the middle of the semester, and one at the end of the semester. Your employer also fills out an assessment at the end of the semester about you, and they do that also in PAL. So it's important that when you're registering for your co-op through PAL, that you note what the name of your supervisor and their email address, so they are part of that system, and they can create an account in PAL if they're not already in it. Once you return to campus after your first semester of co-op, you're going to actually attend a reflection meeting with your co-op advisor. That's a requirement of the program. You can't get graded for co-op without doing that. Most advisors do individual meetings. Some advisors will do small group meetings. But in whatever style of reflection meeting that you have with your co-op advisor, you'll meet with them. They'll give you a grade for that experience. They'll review all of your assessments, and then they will set you for your next phase, which is going on your next co-op. There's some other phases that you should probably know about. After you've completed 2 co-op terms, you are eligible to change jobs. You don't have to change jobs. I know students who will do all 5 semesters of co-op at the same exact employer, and I know students will do 2 here, 2 there, and then their 5th one they'll do somewhere else. And so it really is up to you what you want to do and what's best for your career. But after 2, you are eligible. You can't change jobs after 1. You have to stick it out for 2. And then you can re-enter that job search. You actually have to go through PAL in order to apply for that job change. It's really easy to do. And then once you've done that, that triggers some notifications in the system that the co-op advisor needs to contact you, and you need to get confirmation from your employer that you're not coming back, because they'll get an email once your advisor approves that job change, letting them know that you're not coming back. So if you haven't had that conversation with your employer that you're not coming back and they get this email, they might be very confused, and you're going to want to let them know that you're doing that before you even apply for that job change. You're going to obviously then upload a very brand new resume with all of your co-op material listed in your new resume. You're going to probably remove a lot of stuff, like a lot of high school stuff is probably going to get removed if you have high school stuff on there. And then you're going to re-enter basically the job search, co-op job search phase at search at phase 2. There is an unemployment phase. Should you do everything you were supposed to do for co-op searching wise? You worked with your advisor, you ranked all the jobs, you were active in that search, and you worked really, really hard, but for some reason, for whatever it is, really no fault of your own, you just didn't land a co-op. It does happen. It doesn't have to happen often, but it does happen. If that happens to you, don't worry. There is a system that we have in place that enables you to get credit for the work that you put in to search for a co-op but didn't get one. Because you have to complete 5 in order to graduate in the College of Engineering, but if you don't get a co-op for no fault of your own, we're not going to hold you back. We're going to give you something called a waiver for unemployment, and you have to talk to your co-op faculty advisor about that. It goes through a committee, the Professional Standards Review Committee, and they determine whether or not a waiver is justified, and if so, and your application is accepted, they'll give you a waiver for that 1 term of co-op, and then you'll re-enter the job search at phase 2. So these are the 4 phases of the co-op search process. Like I said, it's 16 steps, but when you really think about it, it's actually a really easy sort of process. And that's really it. And there you go. So I need you to, at this point, adopt an appropriately aggressive job search strategy. For those of you who've done this before, you kind of understand what that means. But I'm going to go through a few tips and tricks that I recommend that you focus on as you go through your job search. First, some key dates. You need to know that on September 11th at 8 a.m., I will go into the PAL system and I will release any resumes that are in there that have been ranked, that have ranked jobs to employers. If you have not ranked jobs by September 11th at 8 a.m., your resume will not go out in the first round. And that'll be a big miss for you. So make sure you do that. Thursday, September 17th is the date of the career fair. It's all day from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'd recommend being there as often as you can that day. Employers or faculty understand that if you cannot attend classes, so you can be at the career fair, they know how important it is that you do get a co-op. I would recommend getting there at 9 a.m., staying till at least lunch, leaving for some food, because it's important to get some energy, have a granola bar if you need that, and then maybe come back in the afternoon. Carlo mentioned some really good tips about don't start with your top company as your first company that you meet with. I don't recommend doing them last because you'll be exhausted. I'd recommend putting them in the middle somewhere. And so go to a company that maybe isn't at the top of your list, maybe they're mid on your list or maybe at the bottom, and start with them, because it's a great way to work out all the kinks in your approach and get out all the nerves that you might have. So I recommend at least 20 companies that you'll want to talk to that day at least. Make sure you do your research beforehand. The 17th is the date for that career fair. The very next day, the 18th, I would also make sure you've cleared your calendar for that as well. Obviously, go to classes, but I would not recommend going out of town on Friday because employers will ask you to interview that day here on campus. And so that's something to keep in mind. And then on Monday, October 5th at 8 a.m., I will release the next round of resumes. And so the first round of resumes is 60, and the second round of resumes is up to 80 rankings. All right, and that's where I want you to be. I will then release resumes again on the 26th of October, the 16th of November, the 7th of December. The 7th of December is an important date because at that point in the term, that if you are still looking for a job, I will then just release all resumes, whoever is left in the system, to all the employers who have yet to hire and say, hey, you haven't hired anybody yet for the spring? Here's everybody I have left. As of December 7th of this term, you will no longer need to use PAL. You don't need to log in it anymore unless you've actually received an offer. I will take care of everything for you at that point. Up until that date, though, you'll need to continue to go into PAL and rank jobs, especially new jobs, as they come. Spring co-op semester, again, is December 28th to May 6th. Strategies. Make sure your resume is relevant. Have all the important components that you need in a resume. If you need help with your resume, go to the tribunal's resume review. Have your resume reviewed by me. Have your resume reviewed by someone that you find that will have some information that you might find important. Do all those types of things. Make sure it's relevant, okay? Rank between 60 and 80 jobs in PAL. Again, can't stress that enough. It's really important that you get to the 60 number. Our statistics show that for every 20 to 30 rankings that you do in PAL, you'll net 1 or 2 interviews. And so 60 rankings should net you between 3 and 4 interviews in total. Be on the lookout for new postings. Like I said, I'm going to send you a Google Doc that lists all the new jobs. It can be difficult to find new jobs in PAL once you've done your initial rankings. And so I just send you a Google Doc with a link that shows all the new jobs so you can easily find them and rank those as very interested. New jobs are really, really important because not only are they new and exciting, but their employer is super motivated to hire somebody because I have a new position, I need to get somebody in this position right away. So if it's a new job and you see it, try to be the first person to rank that as very interested so your resume will go out to them ASAP. I recommend, to make it easy on yourself, after you get your initial 60 rankings in PAL by September 11th, to do 10 rankings per week until you land a co-op. So then you don't have to worry about 80 or 100 later on, or when I email and say, you should be up at 120 at this point. You will already be there and you will have already been out into the world with your resume. And so I recommend 10 every week until you land a job. Again, I want you to apply externally to 5 to 10 positions using Indeed, students.linkedin.com, or whatever other service that you prefer, and get that number between 5 and 10. Indeed, again, I'll mention, also does email or text alerts, and so if you set up an alert, it'll tell you whenever there's a new job posted in Indeed, and you can look at that. Talk to your friends and family. If you do not have a co-op by, say, Thanksgiving, and you go home for Thanksgiving break and you're going to see lots of friends and family, that's a great opportunity to pass the resume around and ask someone to pass it around for you at their places of business. It is not a shameful thing to ask your mom or your dad or your uncle or your aunt or something like that to say, hey, do you think there would be a place for me at your place of business, and could you pass my resume around? Jobs happen that way. That's called networking, and even friends or family are part of that network. Okay, look into information interviews and contact employers directly. It is entirely likely that if you were to call a company that is not in PAL, that maybe is not even offering co-ops or internships, and call them and say, hey, I'm interested in working for a company like yours or your company directly. I noticed that you don't offer internships or co-op opportunities, but I was wondering if I could have some time to speak with you about what your company does and how I might prepare myself in order to maybe someday work there. Employers love talking with students especially about those types of things because it gives them an opportunity to brag about themselves and their business, and it gives you an opportunity to learn a little bit more. Often, that information interview leads to either an actual interview or a job offer. I've seen it happen lots and lots of times. And so do not underestimate the power of an information interview in lieu of actually applying for jobs. Update your LinkedIn profile. Make sure you have one. A good majority of our employers, or even our co-op employers, will tell me that they use LinkedIn almost exclusively to hire talent. And when they see your name and they look at your resume, they'll find you on LinkedIn and look at what you've done on LinkedIn. And if you don't have a profile, it's just you're not going to get penalized for not having LinkedIn. It's just that there's nothing added to that application, right? And so LinkedIn is a really great way to get more information out there. I would recommend connecting with me on LinkedIn so that way I can help you connect with jobs. And then lastly, if you're concerned at any point in the semester about your strategy, about not having any interviews or not having enough interviews, please email me, call the number, and we will meet and we'll chat and we'll talk about it. All right? I'm always available for my students. Once you get the job, someone offers you a gig, awesome. Don't pull the trigger too quickly. I've had students who will get an email from an employer or maybe even a phone call and says, hey, you did really well in the interview. We'd like to extend an offer to you. What do you think about that? And you're like, that's great. I'm really excited. I'm going to take that job. And they're like, great. Well, we got some other things that we'll need to fill out and some work that needs to be done, and we'll send you the official offer soon. They're like, great. And then they hang up, and you go into PAL, and you log in, and you click. Here's all the directions for that. You click the I've landed a co-op button, right? Which is, you're super excited because that button has been staring at you all semester or year, depending on how long you've been searching. And you fill everything out. And then I get an email, and I go in and I say, great, John has got a co-op. I'm very excited. And I click the approve button. That then triggers an email that goes to you, says, hey, congratulations on your co-op. Here are the next steps. And then also an email to that person, whoever created that job in PAL. And that person gets that email and then says, wait, who's John? Because what happened was you were hired by a supervisor, like someone who works in the industry, not in HR, who makes the decisions, right? And so then that HR person calls me and says, oh, we never hired John. I'm like, oh, well, he said he did, so let me email him real quick. And then John says, oh, they called me and they said they offered me the job. I'm like, who's they? And then they say the name of the person, if they remember the name of the person. And then I say, ooh, something's going on there. And they're like, we're doing a background check, nothing's official. And then something goes wrong and now you don't have a job. So make sure you've confirmed everything. I like to get things in writing as much as possible before you hit I've landed a job, because you don't want something like that to happen. And guess what? It has actually happened. Once you have officially landed that co-op and you know officially that you've had it, you've got confirmation, you're going to go into PAL, you're going to click that button, and like I said, all those things happen. Now, if you land a co-op job that isn't in PAL, so you go in PAL and you can't find it, or you found it on your own, so you already know it's not in PAL, the difference is all this stuff just basically says, shoot me an email and say, hey, I found a job that's not in PAL, can you help me get registered for that? And then I will either contact that company for you, or you can contact the company and create the job in PAL, and then I place you generally into that position. All right, so it's fairly straightforward. Some key things to keep in mind if you are going to be looking for jobs outside of PAL, which I obviously am requiring you to do, but if you do find something that isn't a PAL company, it has to be related to your academic program. So if you land a co-op and you call me and say, hey, I landed a co-op in art history, I'm going to say no. You can't do a co-op in art history. It has to be at least 35 hours a week. So you say, hey, landed this great co-op, but it's only 20 hours a week. That's not a co-op, it's a part-time job. Enjoy your part-time job, but that's not a co-op, right? It has to be paid. Now here's the one difference. If they say we're going to pay you $500 for an entire 4 months of work, that's still paid. You're still getting money. So it doesn't matter how much you get paid as long as you're getting paid something. But volunteering for a company is not a co-op, but you have to be paid something, okay? And so you're working 35 hours a week, and if you're only getting paid like $1 an hour, and they can legally do that somehow, then that's your choice, okay? But as long as you're paid something. The employment period has to be that 16 weeks and within the co-op calendar. Our absolute minimum is 13. And the only way you get a shorter co-op term is if the employer says, we can only offer you this many weeks, and then that's okay. But if it's shorter than 13, you need to ask me, and we can talk about that, or shorter than 16. You have to receive appropriate supervision. I had a student who said that they landed a co-op with Google. I was very excited, and then it turned out they were just driving the Google car around and mapping out various parts of the country. And I'm like, that doesn't count, because you have to be appropriately supervised at all times, part of the program. And you have to be formally evaluated by that supervisor in PAL. Some terms and conditions, things you need to know. You have 3 reports when you're on PAL: the beginning of the semester, the middle of the semester, the end of the semester. Do not wait to the end of the semester to do all 3 reports. A, it will take you forever, and you will curse my name and your name and everybody else's name. Don't do that. Fill them out when you get them, okay? Second, an employer fills out an evaluation of you. You are not penalized if an employer doesn't do an evaluation of you, but it's really important that an employer does an evaluation of you. So make sure that they do that, okay? After the co-op, after every co-op you do, when you come back to classes, you're going to meet with me for a reflection. That happens every single time. So you have 5 co-ops, it's 5 reflections. Except if you do a back-to-back co-op where you're doing a spring and summer, say, like there's no split in between, then you'll do 1 reflection for the whole set. But for the most part, after every co-op, you're going to meet with me again when you get back to campus. Sometimes that's a one-on-one, me and you, and sometimes that's in a group setting kind of like this. You must complete 2 co-ops consecutively with the same employer before you can change. Both Carlo and Alan, who are here, both had worked for their employers for 2 semesters and then swapped to a new employer. And in their case, both their second employer, there were 3 terms for them. Actually, Carlo was 2 because he's in the Extend program. But you have to work 2 terms, 2 rotations with the same employer before I'll let you even consider switching. All right? Sometimes it's not always possible. That situation doesn't always happen just the way we like it. Some employers will ask you to not come back, and it's not because you did anything wrong. It's just they're not hiring for that term, and they're like, well, we're sorry, we're not hiring for the term that you're supposed to come back. And then you're going to come contact me, and we're going to figure it out, right? But for the most part, you're going to go back to the same employer twice. And that counts for your second co-op, a second employer as well. So if you do 2 at one employer, and then you get a third term at a second employer, you have to do 2 terms with that same employer before you switch again. So if you want to do a third employer for your 5th term, you have to do 2 in a row every single time. Does that make sense? Okay. And then read and understand the co-op handbook. We should have done that from intro. Last few bits of information. You cannot take classes during co-op. It's a policy that we have. You have to be working 35 to 40 hours a week, so there's really no time for you to be taking classes. However, if you want to take classes online or at night to get ahead, to catch up, to improve a grade that you might have not done as well in, if those classes are offered online or at night during a co-op term, you're certainly welcome to do that. There's a form you have to fill out, but it's generally rubber stamped and you're on your way. If it's a course that happens during the day and you absolutely need this course in order to graduate on time or to do something else, that is something you have to get approved through your department, and so we'll have a conversation about that. But generally, those are not approved. Transportation and housing while you're on co-op is your responsibility. A lot of employers will pay for both transportation and housing if it's not here in the Cincinnati region, but not all of them will. And so you're really going to have to weigh how much you're getting paid and the experience that it is, and whether or not you can afford that. Some people can afford it, and it's no problem. Some people just can't, and that's okay. And you and I can have that conversation. I would recommend going international for co-op opportunities. We have the international co-op program to Germany and Japan. Those are where you do your first few terms here in the United States, obviously, at whatever company that you choose. You get a shortened 3rd term, and then you participate in a language immersion program where they intensely teach you how to speak the language that you're going to, whether it's Germany or Japan. And then your last 2 co-ops are back-to-back in that country. It's a very, very cool program, and it's all kind of set up for you to be very successful in that. You can also co-op internationally on your own. Like Alan, he worked for Intuit for 2 terms, and then they asked him to also work in London for his 3rd term. And that's totally acceptable. It's obviously an English-speaking country, so it worked out really well for him. We also have international co-op programs, agreements with Singapore, Hong Kong, and Toronto. Those are all English-speaking areas, and it's very easy to do programs there, and those are all set up for you as well. Highly recommend doing an international experience. And that is it. Questions?